Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, it's Rachel with Force Management. Before we get started with today's Revenue Builders episode, a quick plug. We know a lot of you are planning your SKO and planning for 2026. Force has a ton of great resources for you as you strategize. We just put out an ebook on 6 priorities for driving growth in your organization, and we have a whole SKO resource page that has helpful insights as you think through making your SKO more than an event. Check it out in the show notes.
Welcome to another episode of the Revenue Builders Podcast. My name is John Kaplan, and I'm joined today with my co-host and friend, 5-time CRO and author of the wildly successful book, The Qualified Sales Leader, Johnny McMahon. Today, we continue with our series with Doug Holladay and the breaking down of his book called Rethinking Success. You know, we've been breaking this down over the last few months, and we're going to continue with that series. So as a reminder, let's talk a little bit about Doug just to refresh your memory. So his career trajectory is very unique and varied with its blend of public service, finance, and business nonprofit work, and more recently, teaching and journalism. So Doug's a co-founder of Park Avenue Equity Partners. He is also co-founder and general partner in Elgin Capital Partners LP, which is a private equity partnership focused on domestic energy development. While Doug continues as an active investor, the main focus of his time is on an organization that he built called PathNorth, and it's a nonprofit dedicated to helping business owners and CEOs define success more broadly. They do this through peer-to-peer learning. PathNorth focuses on creating space for leaders to have conversations on finding meaning and significance in life and work. Doug was formerly a senior officer with the international investment banking firm of Goldman Sachs. There's so many things to list here. Prior to joining Goldman, Doug held senior positions in both the White House and Department of State. After working under White House Chief of Staff James A. Baker, he was appointed by the president to the personal rank of Special Ambassador, charged to coordinate major aspects of the U.S. public response to the challenge posed by South Africa prior to the dramatic release of Nelson Mandela. So Doug's advised several presidents and numerous corporate leaders, and has explained and debated public policy issues on national television. He's contributed to several books on a broad range of issues: foreign policy, culture, theology, and 19th century history, and has placed articles in the New York Times, Washington Post, and USA Today. A true Renaissance man. So, excuse me, like I said, we're going to continue our journey with Doug on this fantastic book called Rethinking Success. Let's jump in. Hey, Doug, we just had a little bit of time before in the warm up a little bit, and both Johnny and I were saying that, you know, how much we've missed you a little bit. That's on us, and you know, we're going to get this back on the. You know, we started with your incredible book, which is Rethinking Success. We started on going chapter by chapter, and today's chapter on gratitude, I think it's just a common theme that's been through almost everything that we've talked to you about. But we're so glad that I know your schedule's been crazy, our schedule's been crazy, but we're so glad to get this back on track. And I know our listeners These episodes are of the highest ranking that we have with the Revenue Builders. So thanks again for being on, buddy.
Oh, you are welcome. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't reflect well upon your listeners that they're they have a low bar.
No, buddy. No, you're humble. So you talk in the beginning of the book. I think you set off on a couple of great kind of quotes. And one of the first ones that you have is like, the more of an effort you make to feel gratitude one day, the more feeling will come to you spontaneously in the future, by Christian Jarrett. And you kind of started off the book with that. Like, what was your purpose of starting off that way? Oh, sorry. Well, chapter. This is chapter 4 on gratitude, making gratitude a regular practice.
Part of why that he is a noted neuroscientist, British. And it's interesting that it's not only anecdotal, but the research really indicates that your brain changes when you have an outlook that's rooted in gratitude. And this said to me that gratitude is a muscle that can be developed and be exercised. Because, we all know people that my mother was like this. Probably you knew people or family that they just wake up feeling like, wow, this is great. This is great. Some people wake up and say, oh God. The other one wakes up and says, oh God. It's just, it's a mindset. So what I liked about this is it's reinforcing. It's almost what you're choosing to see. If you're choosing to see everything is dark and closing in on me, you can find ample evidence for that. But I think what Jared is pointing out, that you'll see more of those. It's almost like an exercise. If I said to us, okay, for the next 2 months, let's be alert to 1960s Volkswagen Beetles. Well, I can't think of when the last time I saw one, but trust me, if we've had that as a mindset, we're going to see some in the next 2 months. We'll probably see quite a few, because we're choosing to look for it in a forest of competing demands.
I love what you're saying.
Anytime you get a brand new car, you didn't realize how many other cars there are of the same make and model on the road.
Great point.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I like about the point that you're making, Doug, is this is powerful for me. Any emotion to sustain is a choice. And and all the science points to it. I think I shared with you guys before, one of the things that totally blew me away when I started looking at that. I started looking this around the pandemic, and I got introduced to Dr. Laurie Santos' course from Yale. And it was the science of well-being, and basically, and it was a free course, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend your book, and I highly recommend that free course. It was just really, really powerful. But one of the things that I took away from that is gratitude is the one emotion that cannot share space with anything else in the brain at the same time. They have that as a fact. You can have anxiety, depression, anger. You can have all these emotions, and they can all share space in your brain. The second that you introduce gratitude takes over. So the science is pretty clear on it. I wonder how long it's going to take us as humans to, internalize that and leverage it.
That's really interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this. This sounds a little theoretical, but it's not. So up until the Enlightenment, and then the whole argumentative times of the Reformation, it was interesting. Up until that time, people thought more holistically: body, mind, spirit. Everything was integrated. Then we began to live in our brains. So Descartes gave voice to that. He said, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
We all started living in our brains. But that's nobody changes. Nobody nobody's life is different because of a thought necessarily. It's more how you penetrate the emotions. So what you're giving voice to, John, is the fact that gratitude really gets down to the heart of who you are. It isn't just a cognitive thing. It just permeates your whole being. And
yeah.
So we have to be careful that we not think that people, this is why nobody changes. You look at the political culture, how divided we are. Nobody changes through an argument. It doesn't, because that's all on a different level. What's driving people today is fear, emotion. They're trying to find safety. They're trying to find touchstones, and you can't talk them out of that. You can't talk them out of that. They're fastened to that. So I think practices like gratitude enable you to dislodge from that fixed mindset.
Yeah, in the book, Doug, you also talk about happiness versus gratitude, where happiness can be fleeting. And a lot of times we're asking people, are they saying, I'm happy?
Yeah.
But in our life, you can have some good days and some bad days. So you can be happy one day and sad the next. But what isn't fleeting is what you were pointing out in your book, is having gratitude or being grateful.
Yeah.
That can be stationary. And then on top, obviously, we're going to live with the waves of what happens in our lives.
Yeah. And I think, John, that's really important that we understand that that trouble is the stuff of life. We're going to always be navigating trouble. We're going to have disappointments, betrayals, loss, heartache of all sorts. And that's the stuff that we navigate. But you say, what are the tools we have to really get in a good space to make good decisions in the context of trouble? Well, one of them is gratitude. I was pissed at myself yesterday because I went up to the drugstore and to get something, and they had this $5 discount. And I kind of, it was a coupon I got, and I said, well, I've never done that, but that's pretty cool. So I go up there and I bought something, and she said, no, you have to do it the day before. Then it went on and on. It was like, oh my gosh. And then I finally said, I don't want any of this stuff. And I was upset that I let that control me. And I left like in a really bad state of mind. And I said, look, it was so ridiculous. I'm talking about $5. And for some reason, my ego got involved with this ridiculous thing. And I just got to let it go. And part of what I did was just started thinking about all the things for which I'm grateful for. And, I want to go up. I didn't say anything mean to the woman that was working there, but I clearly had a pissy attitude toward her, and I need to apologize.
Yeah, it's powerful. I think what I love what you're saying is that we have the ability to choose. The symptoms are never going to change.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear on this. And I've been working on this for a long time. My symptoms don't change.
Yeah.
The inputs don't change for me that more. The reactions, what I'm trying to do is to deal with the reactions. The life stuff, I don't think is going to change for me. In your book, you talk about some practical entry points. You just gave us one example of being like, hey, and you could actually be grateful for your ability to be able to go back and ask for forgiveness for that person. That's a very, very powerful thing between humans, which we're going to talk about we're going to talk about next month. But talk about some of these practical entry points. You have so many in the book that you talk about: thank you notes, gratitude lists, daily 3 things. I love your story about, writing the thank yous each morning and then, doing a yearly review. Would you just give us some practical tools that you've seen let's just get it started with entry points with what people can do.
That's really good. I'm just saying, if listeners, as you're kind of pondering this, I'd say maybe a starting point might be, I always feel like people get too ambitious and say, I'm going to make gratitude lists or whatever. Why don't you try an experiment? Say for the next 5 days, I'm going to write down one thing every day that I'm grateful for. Just some little thing like dark roast Italian coffee today. There's no humidity in Washington today. Whatever it is. But start noticing. That's the thing that you're going to start doing. You're going to start noticing little things that you haven't noticed before. I love the color of this wallpaper. You start noticing things and you put them down and they reinforce. So what Cap's getting at is for years, I've done this funny exercise where I shoot for every morning, but if I'm realistic, it's 4 to 5 mornings. I will write down 2 or 3 things I'm grateful for. Sometimes it's repetitive, I got to tell you. But at the end of the year, I will have, and I do it on one sheet of paper. I have a graph piece of paper, one side and the back, and I'll just write it real little, and I'll have about 2,000 of these at the end of the year, and I laminate it. For some reason, I'm keeping these things, and I'll have real simple, but I have now tens of thousands of these little things. So that's one little practice that I do. The other is, professor at Boston University, Peter Berger, he talked about, he's a secular Jew, but talked about signals of transcendence, that there are things that are trying to be transmitted to us. C.S. Lewis, the apologist and Oxford scholar, he said it differently. There are signposts, almost like God is trying to wake us up to things. So I try to be alert to that. I try to be alert. So yesterday I thought of a guy that I know whose brother died 2 months ago. I called him when it happened. Sorry, Stan, this happened, blah, blah, blah. But it came into my mind. So I just sent him an email. I said, Stan, I'm just thinking about you and your brother and that loss. I hope, may he rest in peace. I just did that little simple thing. Now, a lot of people, when you have a loss of a child or something happens, they're all there the first couple of days, writing them notes, sending them flowers. But a lot of times it gets weird. In 2 months, who's going to do that? Who's going to show up? Because trust me, Stan hadn't forgotten about it.
Right.
Trust me, my friend who is head of a public company whose son committed suicide 4 years ago, he hadn't forgotten about that son. But everybody's kind of moved on. So my view is be open to these signals of transcendence that are trying to say to us, Doug, pay attention. That person, do that. And you'll start behaving differently. You'll start doing strange things that, like I had on my Tag Heuer watch about 6 months ago, and I'm driving along and this homeless guy, I always have a bunch of dollars, I give it to him. This guy commented on my watch about 4 times when I'm interacting with him. And I said, I'm getting the feeling here that this watch needs a new home. So I gave it to him and drove up. I'm sure he's like, what the hell was that all about? But I felt that I'm supposed to do it. But I try to pay attention to these little signals, but they make life so amazingly rich and wondrous because you're being led and introduced to things. And part of that is having that attitude that I'm a grateful person. And, what's going to show up today? What wonderful thing do I get to be a part of?
Yeah. In your book, along those same lines, you talk about blessings that come in unexpected forms.
Yeah.
That you hit with something that leads you to more of a deeper or more meaningful outcome. So I always think about, I've always done this when I've lost a friend or a family member.
Yeah.
You're devastated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've always asked myself, why did that happen? Like, what is life trying to teach me?
Yeah.
And what lesson do I need to take from this? So I've always found myself sitting back, reevaluating, what life's trying to tell me. Then I make a change, and I find like it was such a positive change for me, what I did in my life that I wasn't going to do unless this devastating event happened. So And you talk about that in your book. It's amazing.
Well, as you're talking, John, I was thinking there aren't many people that would say, wow, that loss that was so painful actually ends up on your gratitude list. Mm-hmm. Because if you flip it, it showed you, it reminded you of the brevity of this journey we're on, and to really love the people that are in our world every day. You know, you start saying, wow, out of that one painful episode, 10 wondrous things kind of came into my life.
Well, think about what happened with COVID. With COVID, people had been telling me for 10 years, why don't you write a book?
Yeah.
And I kept dragging my feet. COVID hit. I'm locked in the house. So I wrote a book.
Yeah.
You know? And then and I think it forced a lot of other people, you know, to reevaluate their lives.
Yeah.
People picked up and moved to different states.
Oh, yeah.
People started to only want to do remote work.
Yeah.
You know, the society changed deeply because people reevaluated their lives on something that was, you know, and came in an unexpected form.
Yeah. It almost forced change, but then you either went with the change like you did.
That's a good point.
Or you resist it and keep saying, God, how are we going to get back to this? What's going to happen? No.
That's where I see a lot of people, no matter what it was, like a loss of a family member or the COVID thing or other things. For some reason, to your point, other people take it and don't try to change and look at it as something that's meaningful and positive that I need to change in my life. And they suck it up and say, I'm a victim. And now they play this victim mentality for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
We've all seen that. It's awful.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely. And again, that's why it goes back to, it seems like the greatest thing we can do to create a different narrative for our society, our family, and others is to be people like this that exemplify that spirit of gratitude and wholeness. I mean, I keep feeling like everything goes back to us and what we can do to change ourselves. Yeah, the greatest thing I can do for my 3 boys is to be the best human being I can be. It isn't try to make them the best human being. It's try to make me. Because
that's a good point.
You know, those programs we've all tried with our spouses or kids, and that program doesn't work. The only program that works is kind of like the research on you know, if you want your kid to be a great reader in life, quit trying to get him to read. You should read.
Yeah.
Because people emulate models.
Yeah.
I like this theme we're on right now. And as we relate it to business, to make a little correlation here, because life, you know, we show up to business with our lives. So there is no compartmentalization, I don't believe. I mean, at least
I love that, John. I love that and think it's central to thriving when you don't compartmentalize.
Yeah. I don't see how people I haven't met anybody that truly has done it. But one point I'd like to make here that I really love is, again, when I say it's a choice, I don't want to alienate any listeners, because I've been on the other end of this where I feel like life has not given me a choice and I'm getting my ass kicked on stuff.
Yeah.
However, if I'm open to it, and the beautiful thing is all the science says that we all have the capability for what's called post-traumatic growth. All of us, every human being has post-traumatic growth available. But I don't want to say this in a punitive way. And Doug, I think you can help me with this, because it's available to all of us, but it's not like, oh, suck it up. You got post-traumatic growth. You're a hero. You don't have it. You're a victim.
Yeah.
For me, just knowing that it's possible. And this is a hard part of my life, was just knowing that it was possible, and then being built in the human way that we're built to know that when we do thrive in post-traumatic growth, they call it, we actually get a memory of it. We actually get an immune system that gives us a psychological immune system that says, hey, dude, you faced some tough crap before. You've lost accounts before. You've lost your job before. You've lost that promotion before. And look at what you've been able to do, or look at the opportunity, or look at what others have been able to do. So I think this possibility of post-traumatic growth is a real lesson that is powerful for today. I think, like,
I love what you're saying, Jack. Let me add something to this, because I think this is really important. When we go through something that's really traumatic, a loss of a child or something that's just devastating, I think we have to be careful that we take the time to grieve that loss.
100%.
Like the Kubler-Ross thing. She talks about the stages of grief. And I think we eventually get there, but I find the people that kind of go la-di-da and say, oh yeah, I love, my mother was great, but she lived a good life. Great. Well, I don't know whether they've adequately grieved that loss is there. So I think we got to really allow people and allow ourselves to feel the pain. I was betrayed. I was hurt. Somebody's trying to get even with it, and really feel that pain and embrace it, but not live there. And I think, to get back to John, your point about, if you live there, you're going to be a victim your whole life.
Yeah.
But if you don't stay there for as long as you need to, so that you really absorb it, okay, I think I'm ready now to start walking. And so
this is so related to business, because it's the reflection part. And I love your examples of, like, the skiing example that you give, the slalom skis. They're made to force you to lean in.
Yeah.
You lean in and you go faster and you do things. Like, that was so powerful in your book. And I thought about it. Like, I have spent a large part of my life running from some crap in the past that I just didn't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I took the time to deal with it, then my life was going to drastically change in the moment. And what I didn't realize is, it ain't going anywhere, man. It's going to pop up, like, it's going to pop up and pop out somewhere.
It's like that guacamole thing. When you hit one, the other one pops up.
Yes. And what I love in your book, Doug, is that you, and I love this part because I've taken it and really, this self-reflection, but not to get too heavy here, but I'm hoping the listeners are engaging with this. Like, I have to take every morning and just see what's showing up. And it's not always great stuff. Like, I woke up this morning pissed off about a couple of things in the marketplace, and literally pissed off.
Yeah.
And I had to sit with myself and say, okay, who's showing up? And there's an edgy part of me that's showing up, a competitive part of me that's showing up. And by the way, it got my attention, and it's got my best intention in mind, but how it's showing up with others. Like, I got on the phone this morning, I'm whipping everybody's ass about it. And, but I realized that, okay, John, what's it saying to you? What are you actually pissed off? And I was pissed off because a couple things is that part of me that was barking was telling me, you're not acting fast enough on something. And I just, and that part feels like it has to tell me that. But if I don't sit there in the morning and really ask who's showing up, my day can be helter skelter, man. Like, and I'm just reacting to emotions that were always there and they're just waiting to be heard. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's totally makes sense. And this is a practice that I hope our listeners will at least consider, because I think what you're saying is, we need a moment. We need, whether it's 5 minutes or a half hour or an hour every morning, where you level set, you learn, you feel what it's like to be at peace, and then you can kind of look at the world. But if you keep running and you take that anxiety and that anger, and it just keeps whipping it up every day. So, Socrates says the unexamined life's not worth living. So the idea of creating space every day where we examine, and have little practices. Okay, you sit there and you just breathe. Then you write down 1 or 2 things you're grateful for. And then you consider, what are the big things I need to get done today, the 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you've created a structure that really is full of meaning. And you know where to go. Everything else is a bonus.
Yeah, the younger me didn't deal with it and found something else I had to do, and I moved on. And let's say it came out in some bad ways, especially the younger me. Especially the loss of my father. He died in his 40s, and I never dealt with it.
Yeah.
And then one day I wrote a letter to him.
Wow.
Powerful.
After he was gone, Johnny.
20 years after he was gone.
Powerful.
I finally said, I got to deal with it. I wrote a letter to him, bawled like a baby.
Dude, if you don't have to talk about the specifics, but
it finally freed me,
Oh, that's great.
But how did you, that's such a powerful practice, Johnny. How did you come to the point where you just said, that's going to be a relief? How did you do it?
Because I couldn't even talk about it. Like right now, even it almost starts to bubble up to here. But anytime I had mentioned even my dad and tried to tell somebody, if they say, hey, well, what did your dad do? I'd get right here. I'd almost have to get up and leave. I couldn't even talk.
Yeah.
It was that high. The emotions just came flying up.
Yeah.
And I thought, dude, you got to deal with this. I wrote a letter to him. It was the greatest thing I ever did. Well, now I can at least talk about it. Yeah.
Well, that's a great practice. You paid attention to what was bubbling up. And a lot of us don't. We just keep running and running. Again, Socrates said, beware of the busyness of life. And you just say, part of our problem is we're so damn busy. And part of it is this, we're running from these things. And what we're saying is, what would show up, to use Cap's language, what would show up if we stopped running? Now, for a lot of us, it's fearful.
100%.
We've talked about, I take these 16 guys every year, men and women, to a Trappist monastery for 2.5 days of solitude. And some of them are petrified. They don't know what's going to show up. Right. And so we have to walk through this, but it's powerful. I am convinced that most of what we're looking for is found in solitude, because all of a sudden, when you stop running, the answers start showing up, and the stuff we haven't dealt with starts showing up. But it almost feels like we're making progress because we're running so hard.
Yes. Definitely, I'm guilty of it.
We all are. It's
if I stay busy, I don't have to deal with it. And then eventually you realize, okay, how much longer can I have this monkey on my shoulder? I got to get this thing off.
Yeah. So Johnny, we all have this is so powerful, man. I got goosebumps just thinking about it. Because I remember about 20 years ago, you and I in a restaurant overseas, and my father, I was telling you about when my father passed away, and I was absorbed in my story. And I don't know if you remember it, but we were there and you got emotional, and I actually stopped the story, and I had to apologize to you. And you said, nope, it's not, your story is not what's throwing me. Just keep going. And so for me, I love what I'm thinking about right now is the analogy of the buffalo and the cow in the storm. And this is so powerful for me right now when I'm thinking about it, because it happened in my life. The buffalo, when the storm comes, and they've studied this, in the plains, when the storm comes, the buffalo turns right away and runs full speed into the storm. Mm. They run full speed into the storm, the hail, the lightning, they're getting pounded, because they know that if they run straight into it, it's not going to last as long. And they come out the other side. Now, the cows are in the same pasture, and the cows, they don't run like the buffalo. They run away from the storm, but they're not fast enough. So the storm hovers over them and pummels them for the entirety of the storm. Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
So sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, okay, man, am I the buffalo or the cow today? Like, who's showing up? And I always try to ask myself, how can I be the buffalo today? Like, what needs the buffalo? And it's, it's an analogy, right? And everybody gets it, but it ain't easy, man, because like there's fear, there's anger, there's like, there's other people involved. There's, when you choose the buffalo in life, I'm telling you, the data says it. You face it, you go through it faster, and you get pummeled less.
And but what you're talking about is what, I had a guy that was the head of USAID when all these cuts started coming. He called me and said, Doug, I have a question for you. What does it mean to be brave in these days? What does bravery look like? And you kind of say what you're saying here, Cap, is bravery is, instead of running from these issues, it's facing them. But when you face the demons, I don't know if I've mentioned this here, but I find the analogy really interesting. When you look at whether you think it's literal or metaphorical, but you look at the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, and the first job that God gave Adam and Eve to do was to name the animals. Why is that important? Well, in Hebrew culture, when you name something, you control it. You have dominion over it. So instead of a zebra controlling a human has domain over that, or over the rest of the created order. So my analogy for this is we all have these demons in ourselves. When we name them, it goes from them being inside of us, controlling us, to now we can work on them.
100%.
So, 100%. But you have to start with having the bravery and courage to name these things that are really screwing with us, that are taking us down, and they're patterns. We see them over and over, and they keep tripping us up, and we say, how did I get back here again? So you start naming them. Now you're in control. No longer is that in control of you.
Powerful, man. Powerful. And it goes back to, other chapters in your book that talk about, rip my face off with what you do with your kids at Georgetown. But for me, and then you made me do it in front of the kids at Georgetown. I was just telling my kids about it. I've never told that story publicly.
Yeah, right.
And Johnny, he says, I want you to, tell your story to the Georgetown kids. And I'm like, okay. And here's force management. This is what we did. Blah. He calls me and I asked him, what do you want me to do? He's like, yeah, just tell your story. And then I'm like, okay, all right. It's not that interesting. Force management, left corporate America, blah, blah. And he calls me 2 days before, Johnny, and he says, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm good, man. And he goes, well, how are you doing with your story? I said, I'm good. And he goes, well, what are you going to talk about? And I tell him, and the freaking guy, I asked him 5 times before, and the freaking guy says to me, yeah, that's okay. But just tell your story.
The full story.
And then he leaves me alone. And for 24 hours, I'm sweating and I'm writing down my story that I'm like, well, John McMahon is my dear friend. He knows my story. But the process of owning your story, first of all, connecting to your story, owning your story. And that was such an amazing experience. It's the only time that I've done that in public. And man, it was very powerful for me. And it started connecting so many dots that began to, when you talk about the naming thing, by talking about my story, I know exactly, I have a part of me I call Edgy. I know exactly when Edgy was born. Edgy was born at 10 years old with a pretty traumatic thing that happened. And okay, Edgy's never going away. Edgy's a part of me. But just to know how it's been a part of my story, like great leadership. Will you talk a little bit about what you do with those kids at Georgetown?
Let me just say that I faced Edgy a couple times, Doug. I faced his Edgy a couple times.
But but doesn't it help almost for him to give voice to that? He realizes that it sabotages
100%
interpersonal relationship, business relationship. But the truth sets us free.
100%.
When we start talking about this stuff, and we realize you don't have edgy, John. I don't know if I do or not, but we all have something.
Yeah.
We all have something that's going to show up. That's going to.
But edgy doesn't control me. I control edgy.
Yeah.
No, he's even told me, Johnny, just so you know, I'm getting edgy now. And I go, well, I already figured that out.
Well, but think, Johnny, being honest, right? You and I goof around a lot, but we know each other so well. And I know your intimate details, my intimate details, that the power of that is he helps me be a better leader in my business, because he'll say things to me like, hey, is that Edgy making that decision, or is that John making that decision?
Yeah.
And it's that inference, and I think great leaders, you can't be a great leader if you haven't understood and owned your story. You can't. Because you can't.
Yeah.
Now, you do the thing with Georgetown kids. Just real quick, tell us what you do with the Georgetown kids.
Yes, it's an MBA program, and I felt like there was a need for something that wasn't the typical analytics, looking at strategy and accounting and all the typical MBA fare. This is about how do you become the best version of you? How do you redefine success for yourself? And not let these narratives that have been in our head and our history define us and sabotage us. So one of the things I want them to understand is that those demons, those parts of them, that humanity that is just they're embarrassed about, their flaws, the mistakes, all those things are not actually the end. They're actually the connecting point with every other person that they'll come across. So I said, I want to give you an exercise, because most of these kids their undergraduate was in engineering or they're math nerds or whatever. So they all live in their heads. So I said,
and they're high achievers, bro.
What's that? Yeah.
They're high achievers.
High achievers. But I said, I want you to go to a different space, and this can be really uncomfortable for you. I'm going to have you write a poem. And they're all saying, we're not liberal arts people. We're finance people. I said, great. That's all the better. But I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you the first three words of the poem. I come from. And then, oh my gosh, they start sharing their poems. And I have heard things that are unimaginable. Kids that have lived in their car when they were 13 for 2 years, that abuse, murder in their family. I mean, on and on. And these are the demons that are plaguing these people. And I said, look, okay, what you've done now is now you feel connected. We've been together 1 week. You're better connected to these people on an emotional level than the people
I was there 1 day, dude, and they ripped my face off.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you say, this is what it means to be human. And I said, I'm telling you, what you're experiencing here, this is what reality should be. You're going back to a world that doesn't think this way. And that's why I have them write. I've got them up, got these letters on my desk from my last class. I'll send it to them in about another week. It's a month after the class. And this is a letter they wrote to themselves to say, here's what showed up for me, and I never want to forget this. I had one kid who, West Point graduate, African-American, super achiever, done a joint law degree and MBA at Georgetown. He had a horrible traumatic thing. A cop ran a stop sign in Georgetown, hit him on his bike. He had like 9 brain surgery, on and on. This kid really went through it. And 6 months later, he decided he couldn't do it anymore. He was going to take his life. He's telling me this. And he said, for some reason, he said, before I do, I thought I'd opened my mail. So he's going through his mail. He sees this letter, and he's just trying to figure out, God, that handwriting looks familiar on the envelope. He opens it up and starts reading it. It's his letter to himself he wrote before the accident. And he read this and started weeping and saying, holy crap, this is who I'm meant to be. And it shifted everything now. So we have, it is an experience, as you know, John. It's something, and I am so moved. My biggest problem that last day of class is I just am like, I don't want to start weeping here, because it touches me so much that they have given me the privilege of knowing them in a way that no one's ever known them. You know?
Yes.
Well, Doug, I have a gratitude that came out of that. So this is a episode on gratitude. That was the first time where the mantra for me, telling my story to those kids, that I was saying, I heard myself say over and over, this is just a story. There's no heroes. There's no victims.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was great.
But that's the first time I said it in my life. Now I say it all the time.
Oh yeah, it's a great thing, because you didn't ask for the story. None of us did. It's like Peter Buffett telling me we're all born into someone else's story.
Right.
So all that pain, all that emotional inertia that's in us because we saw that in our dad or our mom or whatever, we didn't ask for that, but we can control how we work through it. And that's why the power of being honest about your story. Yes, being grateful for parts of it, but knowing that there are parts that harmed us, and not being afraid to look at those. There's a great line by E.E. Cummings. He said, to be nobody but yourself in the world is trying every day to make you something other than yourself is the bravest thing you can do. So all of us are trying to be something that the world has told us we need to be. But to be who we fully are, that requires going really deep in our hearts and understanding our story. But that makes us really attractive and authentic. And what are people looking for today? Not perfect leaders, but authenticity. And authenticity begins with me saying, I screwed up. I don't, I'm not emotionally accessible to my wife. I'm not this, I'm not, whatever it is. All of a sudden, the naming that, now we can start to go to work on it.
And the powerful part of what you said, I think, is the takeaway for me is, and bringing it back to gratitude, when we look at our lives and we understand the good, bad, and the ugly, I began to realize that there was no bad. Like stuff just happened. And the power, like John was talking about, this post-traumatic growth is what I called what John was saying, but the power of being able to say, okay, because of that, I started to do these things.
Yeah.
And I was grateful. Like I never thought I'd be grateful for that freaking crap, when I was 10. I never thought I'd be grateful for that. And I actually said to myself, okay, like that had purpose. At the time it didn't feel good. It still doesn't feel good, but it had purpose and meaning, and therefore I'm grateful. And that's like, if I
you reframed it. That's the thing that we all can do, because you can't deny what's happened, but you can reframe it. And you can reframe it and say, okay, in the light of that, I want to be a different kind of dad. So part of that is being honest about, I didn't get certain emotional things that I wish I'd gotten from my father. I say to my class, like I tell them the story of Peter Buffett when he left Stanford and decided to not be his father's son, pursued music. And I told him, in faith traditions, Muslim, Christian, Jew, there's something called the blessing, particularly where an elder says to you, John, you have what it takes. And most young men, I think when you see people that are always striving and needing the attention and all, they never got that. So they're always like, look at me, Dad, look at me, Dad. But they don't, it isn't that. It's kind of like they're trying to be pleasers their whole life. And so the blessing's really important. So I remember Peter, I said that to him, and I said, did you ever get that from your father? He said, he thought about it. He says, 10 years ago, I was in a music show in Omaha, and I looked in the back, and my father was there with Charlie Munger, his investment partner. And he walked down afterwards, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He had never even discussed that I had left Stanford to pursue music. And he said, Peter, we've both been successful in our own ways. I said, Peter, you just got the blessing, brother.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
So I think and most of us didn't get the blessing. That's why it's important. If we didn't get it, it's okay. It's okay. We can get it from God. We can get it from others. But we need to know when it shows up, when we're pandering to get noticed and, look at me. But we also need to, I've written all three of my boys a letter and just told them, without tying it to any performance, just say, I love and admire the men you've become. And I just want you to know, I am so grateful you're in my life and you're my son. And I just want I send you off into the world to be an agent for good and live your dreams.
Dude, that's so powerful. In the gratitude realm and these letters of gratitude, I just want to share a quick experience. And you bring it up in your book, and it was actually brought up to me. It was brought up to me somewhere else, but you would reinforce it in the book of writing a gratitude letter. Johnny, you did it just kind of spontaneously to your father 20 years after. I had a person in my life who was a big part of my life, and he was still alive. And he was like one of my best friends' fathers. And I won't tell the whole story, but I hated this kid. And then I became friends, and then we became friends through athletics. And then the father came into my life afterwards, and he was like a second father to me. He impacted my athletic career, my college career, my business career. And he was the best man in my wedding. And it was, It was a little bit traumatic for my friend. Like, I had to call him and say, hey, is it okay if I ask your pop to be, and not you, if I ask your pop to be the best man in my wedding? Anyways, long story short, real quick, I just want to encourage people. I wrote a gratitude letter for him, and I wrote it like, this is what you mean to me. And, I did it like 2 years before he died. I didn't know he was going to die. He died rather suddenly. My buddy called me, and I will never forget this. When he went to his father's house, there was nothing else on his desk. My gratitude letter from 2 years before was sitting on his desk. And I got to tell you, the funny part is, Doug, when I wrote it to him, he called me, and he's like, Cappy, his name's Ron Grenadier. He's like, Cappy, am I dying? That's what he said. He goes, am I dying? Is there something I don't know? And it was really, really funny. But I got to tell you, that's a blessing. They asked me to do part of the eulogy. I came and I talked about that letter. That is a blessing. That one act of gratitude that wound up coming back to me, it's with me for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's what a thing. And everybody could do that, but we don't. And that's why we have to be reflective and say, what is it in me that is fearful to do that? Or maybe it's just awkward or whatever. But it's just good information to try to, kind of understand what are the blockages to really showering our kids or our spouse with things. John Gottman, who's the noted at the University of Washington, noted as the kind of dean of all relationships. They've done all kind of research and all. And he said, this is really apropos to gratitude and to relationships. Negative things that are said to us. This is why, oh my gosh, I'll say to my class, how many of you, somebody told you something when you were young that stayed with you and they still remember it? This 5th grade teacher told me I wasn't smart. This other person told me, I remember somebody saying in the 9th grade, person said, you should take shop courses because you're not college material. You'd be a good bricklayer. You know, these words have power, these negative things. So the negative really is almost like poison in our system. So Gottman's research suggests this, and this is freeing, but also troubling. He said, for every negative interaction you have, it takes 5 positive to overcome it.
Wow. So
with your spouse, if you're having this snide remark thing, you know, wow, you've gained some weight, huh? Well, trust me, that's one. That is going to be remembered. But if you don't have an emotional bank account that's been built up that you can draw on, you can see very quickly how if every interaction, one of those every 2 weeks, builds up, and you all of a sudden say, why did they get divorced? I thought they were really a good couple. Mm. But it's true with all of our significant relationship, which brings me, Cap, we had talked about this, and I wanted to mention it because I think it's so powerful. When I read this tiny little book called The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard decades and decades ago, I thought to myself, this is all you need. Those of you that run businesses or groups, when I tell you this is all you need, I think, to really be a good leader. And what he says is our tendency is to catch people doing the wrong thing. And of course, we go into a room and I look around and say, God, look at that smudge on the wall. Oh, my son, you didn't put your tennis shoes away again. I mean, our minds gravitate toward the negative all the time. Blanchard's view is this. What if we flip the scenario here and tried to catch people doing the right thing? Now, for example, you know, you have a staff meeting, and all of a sudden I say to Rachel after the staff meeting, Rachel, could you meet me in my office? That's never good. But what if it was good? I said, Rachel, I just want to say something to you. It was so powerful in our staff meeting today when everybody kept talking over Cap. And you said, wait a minute. He has something important to say. I want to hear him. You valued Cap in an important way. I just want you to know, I saw that. Thank you. Do you think Rachel's going to be a better employee now? Do you think Rachel is going to look for ways to contribute? Do you think the culture of that firm is going to exponentially improve? Catching people doing the right thing and developing that emotional bank account. And, you know, you're a football player, Cap, and I think you are too, John, but I was struck when I found out that Tom Landry, when they watched their game films the next day, which is typically an embarrassing thing. John, you missed another tackle over here. God, look at this is so. That's
all I remember.
Yeah. So what? Tom Landry would only show those plays that were successful, where people did the right things, and it seemed like it worked out well for him. I'm not suggesting. I'm not a coach, so I don't know. I'm not suggesting.
He had a number of Super Bowl rings for sure.
Yeah, but I thought
when I read that though, Doug, I thought about a great takeaway for our listeners, regardless if you're leading or if you're interacting with a customer, if you're interacting with a colleague in a collaborative sale, this like catching people doing things well. is so powerful. And it's so like we don't have that mentality typically. We're like, okay, I'm a manager, I'm a leader. I'm supposed to point out the things that I got to correct the behavior. I got to, versus the power, like you just said, the power of showing highlighting when it's done well is just as good, is probably a better teacher than showing them how it's wrong.
But you just think about, when you're raising kids, the power of this, because God, it's horrible. They do every stupid thing wrong in the world. You left the lights on again. You did this, you did that. You left the car running. You forgot, you lost your keys. I mean, there's a million things to be upset about. But if you start noticing, and that's what we were talking about, you start noticing, and that's where these signals of transcendence, all of a sudden, you think of that son and say, wow, I remember when you did that. That was so amazing. I need, as we're talking, my boys are in music, and they, and my son, one of them just finished an album. And my son has this great space in LA where they have bands that come out behind their thing. They have a stage and all that. And I just said, he wanted to honor his brother. So last Friday, he had a show there, about 100 people. And he didn't charge him anything, but he gave Hayes $500 for just thank you for coming. And I thought, that is wonderful. It's just wonderful. And that says more to me about his character and who he is. And
Johnny,
I haven't told him. I need to tell him.
Yeah. Amen. Johnny, could you take this episode to heart, please? When we're playing golf, you could
give me more strokes.
No. Now Doug, I'm setting myself up because he's going to say, point out when I'm doing things well. He's going to say, well, I would if I saw something.
If you did. Exactly.
Doug, are there any other strategies? We've talked about a lot of things. This was very, very deep. I hope that people listen to this and re-listen to it. I know I will. Are there any other things from just like a tactical perspective on, things that we could share with our audience on? This is a choice.
Yeah.
It's a muscle. It's got to be exercised. Are there any other things that we didn't talk about?
I think I would urge people to be brave, take the risk, try one or two of these, like write down for 5 days, one thing you're grateful for, and kind of try to feel, how did this feel? Is it worth extending it for another 5 days? And then if you do write a letter, or if you do decide to catch somebody you love in your world or a colleague doing the right thing, and just notice what starts to happen in that relationship. So it's important to do the thing, but it's also important to be reflective about it. How did that change the relationship? Because a lot of our kids feel like, they're in this penalty box because, they are a problem. They aren't fun. It isn't fun raising kids a lot of time. And you feel like you're the truant officer, but I see it at airports all the time where everything is a negative interaction with that kid.
God. You see those person at the airports are a great example.
Yeah.
And I actually have said to people, hey buddy, do you actually think that the way that you're talking to this person is going to give you a better chance to get on this flight or on another flight? You're out of your mind. Now, I should probably say it differently because I'm edgy.
I think that's good. I think you're not letting somebody be a bully. You're stepping up, and no, you're absolutely right. And I think trying to say that I got a ticket. I have mixed motives on this thing, but I got a speeding ticket in Washington, and I never got the first one. So all of a sudden it doubled. So now it's $300. So last week I decided to write him a note. And I said, look, you're probably going to make me pay this whole thing. But I just want you to know, I don't think I got the first notification, but maybe I did and lost it. But if you could give me a little grace. And by the way, I just want you to know, I know you get a lot of criticism, and I know it's a thankless job, but I just want you to know, I just want to celebrate that you're doing something really important to do, and thank you. And I thought, I don't know what they'll do, but they're still human beings on the other side. They're going to read that letter. And I hope there's a little bit of a smile that might come because I did that. So I guess what I'm saying, Cap, is you can sprinkle this gratitude thing in all over the place.
100%.
It doesn't have to be like, instead of thinking it, you go to the gas station and somebody drives up and the color of the car is really attractive. Well, why not say that is really a beautiful color? Do you think that guy's going to remember that? Of course he is. But nobody does that. But it does something to you. It does something to them. And, just doing little things. My people that work on my car, they'll do anything for me because all of a sudden I'll just drop off a bag of cookies. I just felt the impulse, whatever. Takes no time, but I love doing it, But if you just build it into your life that we're supposed to be there to shower goodness in little ways. Amazing.
I think so too. Johnny, wrap us up, bro. What do you got? It's a deep one. This was a deep one, buddy.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, all of it just, you try to get better in your life as life goes on. And you keep reflecting on what's going on in your life, and you try to have gratitude for what you have and the people around you. And like Doug said, it's pretty easy to get caught up in being busy all the time, not taking the time to express gratitude or even reflect on your own life of what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what this episode is all about. You got to take a little more time to look around, see the people in your life and the things in your life that you're grateful for, and recognize that and recognize them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, to put a bow on that, what Doug does so great in his book, he talks about the practice of gratitude. Gratitude is a life practice, and it's not just a feeling. And if you get anything out of this episode, that's what I got out of it. It's a practice. It has massive return, but it's a practice, not an event or a feeling.
Yeah, it's a way of living that, because everything can be artificial. It's like you read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, remember names, be interested in the other person. All those are good truths, but if they become just artificial prompts, people feel it.
Yes.
But if you just are grateful and just do it, wow, they feel that too. But you feel it.
It's got to come from the heart, though, like you said. Yeah. Otherwise, people can sense
they feel
it's like a Geiger counter. And
this is a good tease for the next session we're going to have. And I'd love for our listeners, get the book, man. Get the book, Rethinking Success. I want to make sure I get the exact title correct. Rethinking Success by Doug Holladay. 8 essential practices for finding meaning in work and life. Today, we talked about chapter 4, which was the practice of gratitude. We're going to come back, and I'm just putting it out there. I'm afraid you guys are going to have to lead the next one because it's on forgiveness. It's on forgiveness. And Johnny, you're going to have to lead this one. But Doug, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for what you do. I'm grateful that you came into our lives. I'm grateful that you've come into the audience. To the lives of our audience, and you're just amazing. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the chance to be in the conversation, and you trusting me in front of your friends that are on this amazing communication vehicle you've created. So
that's the thing, Doug, is I can't tell you how many friends that I have that are not in the business that John and I are on. They're like my friends. Some of which are, they're blue collar workers. They do. And they picked up your book. Some of them bought copies for their entire family.
Oh my gosh.
And now when we're in just discussions over the past couple of years since you've been on the podcast, we reference your book.
100%.
It's amazing, really. So you've had a tremendous
honored.
effect on a lot more people than you actually might realize. So thank you for everything you do, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Cap. And thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cap. Thanks, Doug Holladay. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay.
Thanks to everyone for listening to another episode of the Revenue Builders Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.